Hello, I'm Kim Dodsworth, and the program is The Queensland Storyteller, our weekly 10-minute homage to the short story. The start of new life is almost always a time for joy, rejoicing, gift-giving, and excited planning for the future. The happiness is contagious, widespread, and it builds crescendo-like from week to week as families realize that a new chapter in their world has opened irrevocably. But what if this well-known theme is reversed? How can mere words describe the infinite sadness of the loss of a child at birth? That's the sad theme of today's writer, Suvi Mahonen of the Gold Coast. Her story is called Bobbie, and her sensitive handling of this terrible tragedy cannot help but touch the heart. Bobbie appeared in the Best Australian Stories 2010, edited by Kate Kennedy, published by Black Ink. Suvi is a first-time contributor to our program. She's a freelance writer from Surfers Paradise, and her work has appeared in numerous significant journals and newspapers. We thank her for her contribution to our program. Bobbie by Suvi Mahonen. Strands of light blue twisted, crossed over, then sank into the expanse of knitted wool, only to emerge at the next stitch and repeat the pattern again. They ran in parallel symmetry, converging at the pom-pom at the top of the cap. Around the circumference of the brim ran a border of yellow on which marched small embossed elephants, each holding the tail of the one before it with its trunk. Fine wisps of dark hair, the same colour as Nick's, curled out from beneath the edge to cling to its fuzzy surface in places. When we'd bought it 8 weeks ago, I'd thought it was too small to fit anyone, but Nick had correctly guessed it would be the right size. The skin of Bobbie's forehead, not covered by the cap, was furrowed as if in a frown. This accentuated his eyebrows, delicate lines of barely there hair on the ledge of his sockets, inclining medially upwards to form an arc at the top of the bridge of his nose. His nose was short, more like a nubbin, tilted slightly upwards at the end, like mine. Its tip was a little raw, as if wiped by a tissue one too many times. I ran my finger over the smooth and doughy surface of his swollen lips. Velvety gloss skin, a few centigrade cooler than mine. Drooping in loose repose, colour not right, a dusky shade of purple. He lay in my arms, loosely wrapped in a green flannel blanket, the back of his head resting in the crook of my left elbow. His body was both light and also strangely heavy. I held my arm still, though there was no reason to. Looking at him, I tried to align our eyes. His lids were parted slightly, a hint of blue between moist lashes. As I sat there, propped with 3 plastic-covered, wiped-down pillows between my back and the bed's head, I kept wanting, almost waiting for those eyes to blink. Nick sat on the edge of the bed, arm on my shoulder, looking at our Bobbie. Afternoon light angled in through the window and cast Venetian striped shadows on our son's already mottled cheeks. My finger moved downward, tracing his chin, then onwards across his jaw to his left ear, curving to avoid an open patch of sloughed skin. It wasn't the only one. There were 2 on his right cheek and a large one on the side of his neck, the full extent of its angry margins concealed by the collar of his Peter Rabbit jumpsuit. Made of the softest white cotton, it was the outfit I'd planned for our baby to wear on his first trip back to our home. Across the garment, multiple little rabbits sat on their haunches, cheeks puffed with chewing, holding a large carrot whose tip was missing. Sewn into the outside seam of the left shoulder was a tiny blue tag saying this was a genuine item. Matching mitts and booties were still in the bag. I moved aside a fold of blanket so I could see more of him. His left arm was angled, bent at the elbow, resting on the front of his chest. The embroidered cuff of the suit's sleeve was hitched a short way up the forearm. Between the rim of the cuff and the base of Bobbie's closed fist circled a thick, clear plastic band, fastly secured. In the pocket of the band was a slip of paper, words typed on it in small letters. The portion visible to me said, "Baby of Alicia Russ." The bend over his wrist's bony prominence obscured the rest. A vein line, its discolouring more pronounced than that of the skin, ran up the back of his hand to the fourth knuckle dimple. Lifting his hand gently, I straightened his forefingers and thumb from their loose clench. The webbing between them was puffy and wrinkled, like he'd been soaking in a tub for too long. Such small and frail digits, even in their waterlogged state, the creases over their joints swollen to mere faint lines. On his distal pads were enlarged whorls. Opaque slivers of flesh were peeling back from around the nails. I closed his fingers again, covering his hand with mine. We remained in silence. Me, my husband, and our baby. I was conscious of sounds from outside the room, muffled voices, the ping of a call bell, and the diminishing roll of a trolley. But these didn't enter my reverie. The only noise that was real to me was the whistle of breath from my nostrils and the clicking of the clock's second hand. A mere moment in time, yet this seemed like forever. "Would you like an autopsy to be performed?" Dr. Taylor had asked us. "Is it necessary?" I said. "It's your choice, but it may help to find out exactly what went wrong." "We'll think about it," Nick said. Dr. Taylor stood there by the side of my bed. His gaze kept shifting between Bobbie and the green blanket. From the edge of my eye, I saw his hands move to cross each other and rest at the front of his belt. Speckles of blood soiled the cuffs of his white shirt. I wanted him to leave, but also needed him to stay. It was as if I believed he would somehow be able to reverse this. He stayed for a few more awkward minutes, then made his excuses and left the room with a final, "Sorry." Nick put his arm around my shoulder, and we stayed that way, with Bobbie cradled against my swollen breasts, which were aching with the need to lactate. "You haven't called my mum yet, have you?" "Do you want me to?" I shook my head. Once our families knew, it would be real. I stared across the room at the wall opposite. Glints of slatted sunlight reflected off the glass that protected a framed painting. A lamb standing on a hill's green slope. Underneath it, against the wall, was an empty cot on wheels. It was the one in which the midwife had brought Bobbie back to me once she had cleaned, weighed, and dressed him. I looked back at my son and squeezed his hand gently. His soft nails pressed into the folds of my palm. I turned to look into Nick's bloodshot eyes. "Can you ask the midwives if there are any nail clippers around?" "Why?" "I don't want him to be buried with long nails," I said. I started to cry.